Hey, what's up? This is Chef 187, numero uno, Lyrical Sensei, Montero, Chinsa Chica, Food Shakaere. You guys are listening to Phoenix FM on 89.5. Asmandi Matiri, Molavo, Nakadimwe Kadilo, Nipano Tetula Lepaka Wilo, Jem the Lights, Pasadi Shapona Tilo.
That's right, on Phoenix FM, 89.5 Lusaka City, where only the best is good enough, and these are the weekend rhythms. My name is Bugsy Zimandola, the kid having lunch with me. I have a legend in the building. Oh my goodness. Oh, I want to do this. Come on now. The champ is here.
I love that.
Come on now. Come on now. You know I had to do this. The champ is in the building. He is the king, the legend, the man, the music, the king.
Oh.
You deserve all the flowers.
Thank you very much.
He hails from the Copper Belt, right?
Yep.
Come on now.
Kitwe Town.
Kitwe Town. Born and bred?
Yeah.
Ah! You already know. Make some noise. Oh. Like I said, the man, the music, the legend, the king, Nasty D is in the building. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's been a long time coming. Finally, we are here.
Yeah. At least 2025. Looking good.
It's looking good.
Yeah.
It's looking good.
I'm at Phoenix Radio right now, on air with Bugsy.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, it's looking good.
It's looking good. Nice one. First of all, I'd like you to receive your flowers for all the contribution you've done, you've given. You've given your life to the music industry from the time when pretty much Zambia music was on the rocks. You've been there. First of all, who is Nasty D?
Oh, thank you very much for those flowers. And wow. So I was born way back in the early 70s, and I was born Davis Ngoma. I grew up. I was born in Kitwe Buzakiri Hospital, mine hospital. Yeah. So my mother was working as a secretary at the mine, in the mines there, and my father was an accountant with Zambia Airways around the time. Yeah. So I grew up in Kitwe, but later on, after doing my grade 8 and 9 at Kitwe Boys, I came to Lusaka.
Kibosek.
Yep.
Come
So
on.
from Kitwe Boys, I came to Lusaka, DK. And DK, I went to Unza. I was in first year, 1993, when Shabarans came to Zambia.
Come on now.
Yeah, and the year we lost Zambia, may the soul rest in peace. So that was my first year at Unza. And later on in the 90s, that's when I got into music. Otherwise, I first started seriously recording around 1996. Yeah, so by that time, I had progressed to another course, which I was studying in Zimbabwe. So that's where I had my first studio experience. And it was cool because it was the first MIDI studio in Harare.
Right.
So, yeah, and the software was Cakewalk.
Okay.
So that's where I did my Good Midire, and when I presented it here in Zambia on a program called Sounds Good, which was being produced from the Copperbelt Studios in BC. Yeah. So from then, and that was, I think, the program was shot on the 12th of March, 1997.
You remember that day?
Yes, because, a lot happened on that day. So, and that was me getting into the Zambian music kind of scene. And from then onwards, I think people know most of the story.
So, but what made you pick up a microphone? You went to UNZA, and then you did courses and whatnot, and then you decided I'll pick up the microphone. What made you pick up the microphone? Was it inspired by Shabba Ranks as well?
Among plenty others. But of course, growing up in the 80s, we had a very vibrant music scene in
Yes.
Zambia, and it was catering for both, the Komboni, the Mayati,
Yes.
Ghetto, Upclass, whatever. So we grew up listening to the Pongozis and all the John Mwansas and all those artists who were there. And the only Western music we were exposed to was on programs like on ZMBC, as well as the music I played on, on the radio. And I just was in love with music, and I loved to dance. I was in a couple of dance crews back in the day. I did both break dance as well as
Come on now.
when we got into the rumba scene. I was
Yes.
actually in a rumba dance crew.
Come on now.
Then later on, of course, we had now the hip hop era of the 90s, and we all got into, I was more like Dr. Dre, Tupac, Snoop, and all that. And then later on, got into the ragamuffin then, and that's what I got into the music with, actually, because it was the music happening then. Yeah.
So now, when you decided to go the music direction, was it because that was your life's dream?
It's
or-
always been I don't know, I just always felt, drawn towards the art. I do some, visual art as well. I paint, I sculpt. And I used to be in the drama club from way back when I was like in grade 5, 6, and stuff like that. So I always felt drawn to the arts. But, back then, the arts were not looking as
Yes.
promising as they are looking now.
Yes.
Back then it was all doom and gloom.
Yes.
If you're going to go that route, that
Exactly.
is like immediately after the 80s.
Mhm.
The 90s were really bad, for Zambia.
Absolutely.
And so my parents just insisted, well, before you do anything of your own, at least, get some education,
Yes.
because sometimes it never works out.
Yes. Get some papers to fall back on.
Yes. Well, I'm over 50, and I don't think I'm ever going to fall back on this.
On those papers.
Yeah, but I'm happy it happened that way, because I was quite good at academics, and I did quite well. I usually was among the top 4 or 5 in the class and stuff like that. And so I didn't have trouble, navigating my way through academia until, in fact, when I came from Zimbabwe with my good Midire, I actually, the response I got, it was so encouraging and overwhelming that I thought, I'll start now. Yeah, but then we had no studios,
Absolutely.
and the only studios we had, I only remember DB Studios, and also the studio owned by the late Mr. Roger Sombe. And these were big studios, and like everyone already making it. That's where they were trying to get their recordings done. So in Kitwe, the only option we had was maybe if you go to Luansha, to Mr. Manchuan, but then that was a 4-track recorder. The studio was 4-track, and you can imagine 4 tracks. And you had to go with a TDK metal tape.
Yeah.
That's your master.
That's your master.
Yeah, so if you're going to do like backing vocals and stuff like that, so if you lay the first vocal, after 2 more voices, you have to, after 2 more tracks,
Yes.
you have to bounce everything into the 4th track. And then add just like that. And so you can imagine the recordings were quite, because you can't keep cleaning, it was all muffled and everything, so we couldn't record. And, while I was pondering on the recording, my brother, who had already gone to the UK for studies, he said, here you can easily record, but You see, the best way to come to the UK is as a student.
Mm-hmm.
So if you apply for a course and, maybe
Mhm.
that can work. So
Mhm.
I applied to do an accounting course at
Mhm.
West London College.
Mhm.
I was accepted, and
Right.
we hustled with the family, and I went there to study accounting.
Mhm.
And the whole plan was to record.
Yes.
So while I was there, the first thing I did, my brother helped me get, one of these student jobs. I
Mhm.
was a cleaner in a restaurant.
Mhm.
Later on, I worked my way to a griller in a chicken, restaurant, and
Mhm.
so I used to get some bit of money, and
Mhm.
every weekend I would go to the studio.
Mhm.
And that's how I recorded my first album, the whole album, the
Nigelize Gambalize.
Yes. And my first batch of CDs were actually printed in the UK. So those that remember the CD for Nigelize Gambalize, it was top quality.
Yes,
And
yes.
those times, mine was the biggest first ever CD.
Mhm.
There had been other CDs before.
Yes.
There were some two gospel, groups that had done CDs, but those were locally cut.
Mm.
So mine was digitally
From
mastered,
yeah.
and so it was the bomb. And people bought my CD because the quality was the same as everything else they were buying from sound.
Mhm.
And yeah, it went pretty well. So yes, I would just always love music, and I whenever whether I'm doing something, whether an engagement or not, I'm ever doing my music. I always carry my guitar.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Okay. So now you go to the UK, you're studying and you're doing music. So after you finish your course and the CD is out, the album
I
is
didn't
out.
actually finish my course.
Oh, okay. So what had
So
happened?
I'm in I was doing chartered management accountancy. So I was in my second stage of the old syllabus then.
Mhm.
I had gone halfway through in my recording, so some 4 or 5 songs were almost done. So I packaged some demo CD,
Mhm.
which I sent back home.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and I think there were 3 or 4 songs on that CD.
Mhm.
And sent it to a friend who gave it to a friend and gave it to a friend, and it ended up with the late Innocent Kabwe,
Mhm.
the Velvet Boys
The Velvet
at
Boys.
ZNBC. So he sampled the album, and he just believed it was a bomb.
Yeah.
So now they started playing it on ZNBC.
Uh-huh.
I'm busy there hustling. I just started now getting calls because then there was no cell phone.
Right. Yeah.
So one morning, I just hear the line ring, and it's some reporter from a magazine called Trendsetters, and they're asking me about the song.
Yeah.
That's when I knew,
Okay. I'm making it
maybe
big at
now
home.
it's time.
It's time to go back home.
Yeah. So after that, I knew that the interest was building back home.
Mhm.
So I just focused on finishing my album, and I abandoned my course, I must say.
Mhm.
Came back to Zambia.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the rest is
The rest
history.
is history. How was the community back there? How was the response to your music there in the UK?
Actually, the thing is, when I was going to the UK, actually part of the dream was, this is it. I'm
Right.
gonna get into, the market there and just do my thing and stuff like that. And I thought, well, I'll take my ragamuffin music.
Yeah.
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 So while I was there trying to record, I still thought, well, maybe if I record and I push from here,
Mhm.
then I'm on a bus one day, and I just hear this kid, some Jamaican kid, with some uncle of his, and they were on a bus with me, and the kid is just playing and speaking their patois and stuff
Yeah.
like that. The way the kid was sounding in my mind, I'm like,
What?
if only I could just do my music and sound like that.
Like that.
Then it hit me. I was planning to make it big
Mhm.
in a language that I was not very comfortable and confident. And that side, I used to live in Peckham.
Right.
And Peckham, Camberwell, there's a lot of Jamaican, black settlers there.
Mhm.
And I realized that our raga would not stand.
It wouldn't.
No.
We were far
And
behind.
actually, you see, that just convinced me to say, well, it's easier to start back home, and I started my language.
Right.
And now I emphasized on how I was going to deliver my music.
Right.
And it was, I will nyanjalize it and I will bembalize it.
Right.
So, nyanjalize, bembalize, it
Yes.
had whole songs that were, done in maybe a reggae, raga kind of tune, but all sung in vernacular, which wasn't common back then.
Right.
Because if you knew a bit of reggae, you wanted to sound,
Right.
that's how it was. So, yeah, I focused on that. And when I came back, it actually worked, because when I sent like that 10 of songs, the songs were very well received. So when I came back later on, like with a full album, I think it had 13 songs, almost 8-10 songs. They were hits.
Okay.
Yeah, so it worked out.
It did. We take a short break. We'll be back. I have so many questions.
Wow. Now I feel old.
Really now?
I was composing those songs in 97 around that time.
You've lived through the generations, the eras of music.
Wow. If anyone asked me that time, I would imagine the 20s to be like
Serious,
I really did, because I started very fast.
Yes.
Didn't go beyond 40.
Here we are.
The beauty about it is I'm still enjoying making music.
Yeah. And still making great music.
So my whole album, I only featured a friend that I met in Zimbabwe who introduced me to the studio I went to attend. And we did one song, but the whole album, it was just me, just all of them. And back then, there was nothing like a feature, right, on someone already. You just had to come the way you are.
The way you are.
The audience will judge you based on
What you
about you. So, but what was good was there was very little competition.
Yes, yes.
So it was a time when, like on these big festive days, in Lusaka, between myself and the movie passing with the Chamanyans and Saka, and then MC Wapo, the big food table that were not that big, there'll be no one happy anymore. So if you have gigs and this one, those crowds, if you go into a town like Bridgestone and you're from Lusaka, a big name, chances are you're just the only one for all that festival. So, yeah, good.
Gudumilile. This song still speaks to today. It has transcended. Yes. Would you have thought that the song would still be relevant in 2025?
No ways, because actually, that time, the time I was at UMZA,
Mm-hmm.
so what used to happen is when you get your pieces, you get your Gambis up and running, but then it will only make sense like the first 1 week.
Yes.
And after that, you are back to monk sausage or
Yes.
whatever. And chunks were not as common as they are now.
Yes.
So, so what used to happen is there will be times towards the end of the month,
Right.
most of us that especially imbibe the little and stuff like
Mhm.
that would have nothing.
Right.
So if you didn't have moments to visit so you can eat some decent food,
Yeah.
you had nothing. And then if you visit a relative in town, like, these uncles, I'm going to visit, and then you go visit them, they give you something. The first thing we'll do is go, there were tunnels to Kamwara market.
Yes.
For the Nshima.
Yes.
At the market.
Yes.
Because there, with the smallest budget, you choose between meats, you know what I mean? And you're a student, you've been, dining on rolls and you go for a whole week or 2 weeks. If you start your cambis, then you have to buy cooking oil, you buy tomatoes, you buy what, but if you just go to the market, so I knew the culture of the Gudumilile and the Sima Pamarikate and stuff like that. But I didn't think that, it was something that would, because it's the same thing. You go to Kamwara, it's still happening.
Still,
yeah. And I'm sure most of these students, even now, they do the same.
True. So, yeah. So when you broke out, it was at a period where Zambian music first had really diminished, and then it was starting to grow back up again. Like you said, you mentioned in the background, there was just a few artists, a few groups.
Yeah.
Wasn't it scary doing it by yourself?
Now that's the thing. There was a good number of us hustling. Like in my case, I started my music hustle in Kitwe. And so, I knew friends from within Kitwe. We would, attend. There was these variety shows, and there would be competitions, and I would go to those. And so a number of us had interest, So when I got the chance now to start my music professionally, that's when I moved to Lusaka. At the time, especially when I came back for my studies. And the first thing I did was, again, invite my friends, Louis X, Twice, and Rankin C. I even invited the Desh to come. Desh had been with the Rap Prophets, but around that time, they had, like separated because Chivangu was here in Lusaka. He had joined the Bishop, and, so Desh had been left behind in Dora, so I invited him over to join the Ever. We called ourselves the Ever Hydrate. So for me, we were hustling as a team, and I know that Chamanyanzi, Saga, they also had movie passes. So there were these, like staples that you could get into. And so if you had interest in music, you'll find your kind.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how it was. So it wasn't more like, it was strange when you come now to the audience, because we had situations where you hustle and you get a gig somewhere, and people are paying. They're coming to see you, but they're just interested maybe in that one hit song that they hit.
Right.
And they'll just wait for you to. They'll even urge you to finish. Say, get to that song, so I to Kushana to make a porumba. So it was like that, and that was the disappointing part.
Right.
Because there wasn't much Zambian local happening hits. For you to hold up like a whole audience for an hour or so.
Yeah.
And that's how it helped to gang up, would invite each other. So this one is doing their hits, this one brings their hits, and then you put the united front, and that way we made sense to the audience.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall be back with more questions on the other side.
Hi Bugsy, it's Ida. I'm the one that likes to laugh how you like saying hey. And then I have my sister right over here, Jessica. Hi Bugsy, I love how you like saying hi living. Hi Kiki.
I tell you. On Phoenix FM 89.5 Lusaka City, where only the best is good enough, and these are the weekend rhythms. Man, spotlight today's the legend, the king himself, Nasty D.
Yeah.
Great to have you in the studio. I'm fanning out every time, and I'm enjoying the journey so far. The Ever Hydrates.
Yes.
And
EHD.
EHD. How many songs did you put out as the Ever Hydrates?
Actually, as the Ever Hydrates, we did an album which was never released.
Really now?
Yeah. And, another part is that the Ever Hydrates, we broke up when we were actually in the studio working on a project.
Why?
So we had grouped up. It was myself, it was Twice, it was Louis X, it was Dash, as I said, and we even had the late Steve Locks. Yeah, he was Rasta, a friend of ours who was guiding our music actually.
Right.
And by then I had even incorporated Brad Dave, who was the guitarist. He later played for a lot of other artists.
Right.
So we were supposed to record this album after my first album as EHD. So while we were in the studio, we lost Steve Locks. Okay, we had gone for some outing in Kawe for some days. When we came back, he had gotten malaria, So he was sick for a week, and the second week he had died. And we were broken as a team. So we just said, okay, we'll put the recording on hold. But at the studio where we were, Twice was staying there, so he was recording his stuff as well. So that's how he finished most of the group songs on his own. And when Louis, myself, found out, we were not happy. So the song Tomato Balloon.
Right.
When you go to Zamcops,
Right.
and we were actually, because we had a serious dispute over the song, because it was authored by the three of us. And it was, I've never really spoken about this actually.
Let's think about it. Safe space.
Wow.
Safe space.
Okay. So we tried to, we actually went for arbitration, and we were cancelled by the late Webster Malama. Now, Mr. Webster Malama is a man that fought and worked hard to put Zamcops in place.
Right.
So we went there to try and understand how we'll handle the issue of who owns what rights.
Yes.
So when it was made clear, we were even given an example of the song by Barney, Pete, and Bob, the Get Up, Stand Up.
Yes.
Which it was the same story. Bob made it popular on his own, and then the other friends also claimed, and they ended up having rights to do their own version and stuff like that. when initially it was a group
A
song.
group song.
Yeah, so we found ourselves in the same situation. So those that remember the Tomato Balunda before it was released,
Yes.
I used to lead
Mhm.
and I used to sing the
Mhm.
chorus
Mhm.
and the first verse.
Mm.
And Twice would come in on the second verse, and Louis would come in on the third verse.
Mhm.
Yeah, so because of that, the spirit got, disturbed, and
Mhm.
we each took up our solo careers after that.
Right.
We didn't stay long apart because later on we met again
Mhm.
as the Zambezi Symphony.
Yes.
So now we just put our energy into, because now we realize, it wasn't easy going each one their own route
Mhm.
when you can cover more territory if you group up and you do
Yes.
some. Because then the money was more in the gigs,
Yes,
you
yes.
take your show around and stuff like that.
Right.
And so we realized that, go back together. We worked together in Zambezi Symphony.
Mhm.
And that's where we did some works under Zambezi Symphony, where we appeared on the one album.
Mhm.
But the one album we actually ended up doing, I think it was considered too political.
Mhm.
And so, because that time we had very few options in terms of where you can promote your music.
Right.
We just had ZMBC
Yes.
and Radio Phoenix,
Yes.
and some music, when it brought a lot of, questions
Yeah.
and interest from those up there, people didn't want to be answering those questions.
Mhm.
So when we were trying to push the album before releasing it,
Mhm.
we were told by friends, of course, who were DJs that always received our music and they would push it. They just told us, well, this one might get us in trouble.
Mhm.
So we decided, well, maybe we'll abandon that project.
Mhm.
So the album was called Amayufilizanda.
Amayufiliza.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the reasoning was, well, if the youths are the majority,
Mhm.
then we should be ruling because
True.
votes are by numbers.
True.
So we didn't understand why we were not in power then. And so
Okay.
that's how it went. Yeah. So there was all the politics from Louis, the politics from Twice, and my own kind of politics in the album.
Okay.
So we never really got to release that album. Hopefully, maybe later this year we could get back together in the studio and do an EHD album properly.
We'll be back. I have a question about that.
Phoenix FM. Weekend Rhythm.
Party people.
With Bugsy the Kid.
That's right. The weekend rhythms continue. The legend, the man, the music, the king. Nasty D's in the studio with me.
Yeah, man.
So, how are you feeling, Zand?
Mhm.
So like it's like your thoughts then are the thoughts even on the ground now.
I'm beginning to pick up on that, and I'm quite excited about that. So my own belief has been that in our country, our land of work and joy, the youths have not felt comfortable participating in politics.
Right.
Now, these have known to, some like detail because I worked with a lot of NGOs back then. Like I had worked with Operation Young Vote, where the whole project was aimed at encouraging the youth to register as voters and to get their voters cards and then to proceed and vote. And most of the times the youths would, say the same thing, the same complaints that are there now. I see them on social media when they're trying to rant out and all that. And we were feeling the same way. And so for me, I felt more like if politics were made to be interesting so that the youth can take part, then maybe, we will have solutions that the youths are happy with.
Right.
Than the way things have been from the youth perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, so I can see this, movement building up, and I think it's healthy.
Right.
It's very healthy for the future, the politics of the country. Even these big political parties, I think they'll be happy to have youths that articulate
Right.
and are interested in ideologies and
Right.
following this and that, as opposed to the cadres that we've had,
Absolutely.
because they're
Yes.
the ones that have made the politics look so unattractive.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think this movement might just bring a bit of a difference.
Mm, nice. All right. Let's get back to the musical side of
Yeah.
Nasty D. So now, as Zambezi Symphony, how many albums did you put out, first of all?
Zambezi Symphony now. Zambezi Symphony wasn't like a band or
Mhm.
anything. It was actually a company, a production house.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And it was being run by myself,
Mhm.
and we were the directors, me and two lady friends of mine that were lawyers then.
Mhm.
And it was meant to promote, because after I launched my first album,
Mhm.
I experienced a lot in terms of learning the industry.
Mhm.
And I also noticed that there was a lot that was not in place.
Right, right.
And that made it difficult for people to, launch out with their career. So,
Right.
Nasty D Production, the Basic Symphony rather,
Yes.
it was under Parallel Productions. So the company was in Parallel Productions, and then Zambezi Symphony was now the team I put
Mhm.
together.
Right.
So each of the artists under Zambezi Symphony was a brand in their own right.
Right, right.
And that's why whenever we performed, everyone would perform as themselves at some point, but we would back each other.
Mhm.
And we helped each other in the studio, for live gigs and everything like that. So Shmaster started like a song that he did entirely by himself appeared on my album actually, the Zambezi Eka Eka. It was a song called Dicha Kumutima.
Mhm.
I just did the intro,
Mhm.
and the rest of the song was by Shmaster.
Yeah.
And the idea was to push him out there, because I felt people had not heard him yet, so they needed to hear his style as well.
Right.
The same thing with Louis X.
Right.
Louis' music, his first whole song to be published was published on my second album,
Mhm.
Fwelele Fwelele Mzambe Chimatia. And that was a song called Iwe DJ, and also Champion. He did all those.
Yeah.
It was on my album.
Okay.
So Zambezi Symphony was more of a way of, trying to help each other get out there with our music.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like one band.
Okay.
It was different brands in there
Okay.
and would help each other. So
Right.
Black Jesus was Kushiba, there was Mwaka, there was Sam Cooley,
Mhm.
Dash, there was a lot of guys.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So, you play musical instruments.
Yeah.
I think you were the first, maybe only, that was doing live
Back then,
performances.
yeah.
even?
Actually, like from our generation of musicians,
Yes.
of course, there were bands like Amayenge
Mhm, mhm.
that picked up most of the guys when they wanted to do live gigs. Like
Yes.
in the early 2000s, I
Mhm.
think JK, Wabuino,
Mhm.
a lot of the guys would be backed by Amayenge, or there was Impact Band, there
Right,
was No
right.
Parking Band, there
Right.
was Bishop. I was one that ventured to have my own band.
Right.
I was ridiculed, laughed at, because we were not so great as a team, okay?
Mhm.
We had one or two people that were good with their skills, but
Mhm.
most of us were novices.
Mhm.
And so, the only way we worked and made it
Mhm.
was because, you see, there's one thing about music that I've learned. You don't need to know a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
So for me, my instrument playing has been for most of my music life has been restricted to my music.
Right. Right.
And there's no way I can fail to play, a song I composed myself.
Right.
And so, our skills were limited, but we did our thing and we presented our music the way it sounded on the CD.
On the CD,
So
yes.
it didn't matter,
Yes.
that I didn't have the greatest, drama or the
Mhm.
greatest bassist or stuff like that. But then I ended up producing, some guys that, have gone on and, are great in their own right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And recording as well, it was just the same.
Like,
raw.
when I did Zikolam Tendere. Zikolam Tendere was produced by Thomas Nielsen at Feedback Studio. Now, Thomas Nielsen was some Danish guy. He had, like real talent in producing and stuff like that, and he was a bassist, in a band, so he could play. But so Zikolam Tendere, I introduced instruments, but the whole music was not. It was all done on the computer, of course, and we sampled the drums and everything. When I did Zambezi Eka Eka, everything was played. All the little things we played them, except the studios then there was a lot lacking, so sometimes it would be difficult to pick a sound from this. And so if we used the keyboard, it would still be trying to get to the original sound. So if you listen to my Zambezi Eka Eka album, there's a way it sounds, and there's a lot of raw guitar, feel in it. Yeah, so for me, growing up watching the Pongos, it's not music if someone doesn't rock a guitar. So yeah, so that's how I just, and for me, that's been my dream. My inner dream of being a rock star, like my childhood dream of being a rock star, was to actually rock the guitar, And so throughout my career, I've tried to incorporate the guitar and other instruments in my music. And as a composer, actually, that's my primary instrument for composing. So I play guitar, I also play drums. I love the harmonica, which I play a lot as well. Yeah.
Nice. I have so many questions, but just little time. We need to continue this conversation someday.
Well, I think so, because you can't, it's 30 years of music history, and you can't, summarize it in an hour.
True.
It's
True.
Because there's other adventures on the road. And a lot.
Yes, on that one,
Yes, and, I've also worked with a lot of other Zambian musicians. Most of them still around, some of them still happening, some of them are late. But I've mingled with a lot of musicians as well. So, yeah.
We'll do a part 2. What are your thoughts on the current music crop?
Interesting. I have been following a lot, this young generation of musicians, and I visit studios a lot. I've been working on something with Louis at Upper Resource Studios.
Oh!
So I am very much in touch with the young musicians who are happening now. A lot of interaction goes on behind the scenes, and what I'm liking is their fire for the industry, for the music, the passion they have for the music, and the fact that the music has changed, the industry has changed, and you can earn something out of it. I mean, today we are even having debates, in the socials about the Zambian musician being the most, the richest and all that. Back then, you wouldn't talk about wealth of any musician because everyone was struggling.
Yes.
And it wasn't that, their music couldn't do it. It was because, that's where the country, as an industry, that's where we were, And it's interesting to see that now, if you put in effort, there will be some monetary appreciation coming back. And it's well worth it for these young ones who are fighting. And I can see them really pushing it hard. I've heard the complaints that people make sometimes through some of us, but you see, this is how music, moves. This is how it transcends, generations. It evolves along the way. And it evolves according to the influences around the young people that are picking up the mantle in that generation. There's no blame we can put on this generation of music and musicians, apart from just learning to say this is what's trending world over, because they wouldn't pick it from nowhere.
Absolutely.
And they see it working for others in other countries. it's folly to try and insist, no, do traditional music, which you won't buy. And so if they do, I mean, we tried it. There's people that love Kalindula.
Right.
But if you're doing Kalindula music, you won't stand a chance of your music being heard like this, like that. It's a little bit challenging. And so, artists also are looking to survive.
True.
And they use the talent in a way they think the talent will bring them some kind of survival. Yeah. So for me, I'm happy with what's happening because I think even in my time, I had no control over the dynamics that were playing around me.
Yeah.
I think I just succumbed to everything and I just did things according to, I reacted as an artist at that time according to the situation around me. And I think it's the same thing happening in this time as well. So it's all good.
Nice one. Anasti, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're awesome. Continue being awesome. You are
Thank
appreciated.
you very much.
Through and
I'm
through.
honored, and to all the listeners out there, a point chidi.
MKA. Phoenix FM 89.5 Lusaka City. Keep listening.